This is part 2 of rigging a bird with Auto Rig Pro. In part 1 we rigged the whole body and the wings. Please watch it before watching this video. In this video we'll do a couple of things. We're going to rig the face of the bird, so the eyes, beak and the tongue. Then we're going to edit the control shapes so that they look nicer and they're easier to use. And finally, we're even going to add some additional custom functionality to the Auto Rig Pro rig. And let's take care of the face of the bird first. So with the rig selected, go to ARP and edit reference bones. Select the head bone and open the limb options. Auto Rig Pro's facial features are an extension of the head rig. So you have to enable facial, and then we have the option to enable or disable certain parts of the face rig. So for example, we have eyebrows, which I'm going to disable. You can use them for cartoony effects, but here I'm going to keep it simple. I definitely want eyes, and the other eye options are fine for now. Definitely enable align eyelid. I just find it much more intuitive when this option is on. Nose, I don't need. Cheeks, I also don't need. The mouth will enable us to rig the beak, so keep it enabled. And lips amount I'm actually going to increase to 3. That is just for a fun little effect that I'm going to show you. Soft lips I want to disable. Teeth I don't need. I do have a tongue, so I'm going to leave it. And chins I don't need. So that's looking good. Let's press OK. The first and most important thing are probably the eyes. So let's grab all of the eye bones on one side, enable X symmetry, and then I want to position these eye bones exactly in the middle of the eyeball. So let's go to object mode, select the eyeballs, go to edit mode. With the mouse over the eyeball, press L, Shift S, cursor to select it, then go back to the rig, edit mode, and then with all of these bones selected, press Shift S, selection to cursor. Now from the top view, I'm going to rotate these bones so that they're fanning out towards the edges of the eye. And same from the front view, and then I'm going to press S to scale up all bones. Now I can actually press Shift H here, and that will leave me only with the eye bones. Now let's zoom in, and now let's try to align them. Pay attention to the names that you see here in the upper corner. If you don't see them, make sure that you have overlays enabled and text info is enabled. Also set snapping to face project. And now I want to select the one eyelid corner and snap it by pressing Ctrl at the corner of the eye. And then find the other corner, here it is, and snap it on the other corner. So this is the top one bone, this is top 2, and this is top 3, and this is top ref. So this is a special bone. We're going to talk about it in a second. First, let's align top 1, 2, and 3. So top 1, top 2, and top 3. Align them something like this so that they're equal distance from the corners and from each other. And then BOT 1, 2, and 3 align in a similar way. In this eye offset bone, grab its end and snap it in the middle of the eye, on the surface. So now let's take care of these main top and bottom bones. So I'm going to snap this top bone just above the middle of the top eyelid and the bottom one just below the bottom eyelid. For these bones, we should switch to octahedral because their roll actually is quite important. First, from the top view, I'm going to rotate this bone. Let's actually select the top and bottom bone and press Shift H to isolate them. And then from the top view, align them so that they're pointing just towards the middle of the eyelids. Now press Alt H to unhide everything and match to rig just as a test. And so these are our eyebrow controls. If you try to manipulate them now, even though we haven't weighted the mesh yet, you'll see how the eyebrow controls kind of go at an angle like this, whereas we want them to go straight down. So this has to do with the roll of these top and bottom bones. So let's go back to the reference bones. Select the top bone and the bottom bone, Shift H, and I'll press Ctrl R and roll this bone until it looks nicely oriented. And because that is not very precise, let's enable axis. And so roll it so that the Z axis is pointing up like this. And let's roll this one as well. So here again, the Z axis is pointing like this. And press Alt H and match to rig. Now, if you try to move this bone, the trajectory of these eyelid bones is quite different, and the lower eyelids also move nicely. Okay, let's go back to the reference bones and work on the mouth, or the beak, I should say. No, actually, before that, let's take care of the tongue. So this here is the jawbone, and these three connected bones are the tongue. So from the side view, place them inside the beak, and then I can go to solid mode and X-ray, and I'll be able to see the tongue and align the tongue bones to it. Okay, next from the side view, select the jawbone and all of these small bones, which are lip bones, and move them towards the beak. If you look at bird anatomy, you may find that the point of rotation of the jaw should be around here, behind the eye, but that didn't work for me quite well. Of course, you can experiment with this, but I found that if I place the jaw around here, that works well for me. And the end of the jaw I'm going to place around the end of the beak. And now to the mouth bones. These roll bones are not important, we won't be using them, so just place them just roughly like this. This mouth edge bone also won't be very useful to us. So I'm going to place it here around the edge of the mouth, and I'm going to use surface snapping as well to place it on the surface. Let's hide the jaw and tongue bones. And so this first bone will be at the tip of the beak, and also from the bottom ones, this one will be at the tip of the bottom beak. And the remaining three bones just snap to the surface of the beak at equal distances, so something like this. And make sure to keep the order of the bones. This one should be closest to the tip. This one is the next. And this one next. Now let's use surface snapping. And that's it for the beak as well. Let's press Alt H and match to rig. So now we have this control that we'll be able to use to open and close the beak. So now we'll be working on the weight painting. When I was getting ready for this chapter, I noticed that this model has slight inconsistencies in the symmetry. So what you can do here, this is just a quick tip. If I go to edit mode and enable X-ray and just select one half of the mesh, like that, and then go to mesh, snap to symmetry, it will tell you that it repaired some symmetry. And that way, using mirroring in weight paint mode will work as expected, whereas without fixing this symmetry, you may get inconsistent results. Now I'll select the main mesh and the beak, shift select the rig and press Ctrl P and choose with empty groups. That will just add vertex groups for all deforming bones here in the vertex groups lists, but it will not change the existing weights. And that is exactly what I want because this rig actually already works. I just want to fix the eyes and the beak. I'm going to select the two eyelid controls and these small eyelid controls, which are also deforming bones, and press Shift H to keep my viewport clean, and then shift select the mesh and go to weight paint mode. Now if I control click on one of these lid controls, I can start painting. And let's go to tool. My brush is set to mix. Strength I may want to lower a little bit. The settings are looking good. I have mirroring enabled here and auto normalize. So now I'm going to click in this area, something like this, then on the next bone and give it some weights. Now if I move these bones, they should affect the mesh. So if I control click on this thing here, which is only a control, and move it down, you'll see that I'll start closing the eye. And it worked surprisingly well. I was expecting that I'll have to do more weight painting. There are still some issues. Let's see if we can address them. Control click on this bone and blur a little bit. And same here. And that's looking quite good. I'll have to blur the lower lid a little bit as well. I think adding more weights for the middle control, for the middle eyelid control works well. With a lower weight, just tap this area lightly. Maybe that's a little bit too much. I'm zooming in so that I don't paint on the upper lid. There are better ways to do this, but I'm being lazy. Okay, this is looking nice. By the way, fun fact, many birds do not actually close their eyes like this. Some do, but most birds actually have a translucent membrane which moves on top of their eye. Now, if I unhide everything and try closing this eye, it should work exactly as the other one. That is because I have a perfectly symmetrical mesh and I used weight paint mirroring. So the whole beak is already moving with the head. So here I'm going to go to the beak. The upper beak is fine. It is just attached to the skull. But the lower beak I want to open with the jawbone. And I also have a tongue object inside. So I can actually go to edit mode, select everything and press P and separate by loose parts. So now I have the upper beak, lower beak, and the tongue as separate objects. Now for the tongue, I'm going to delete all groups, then select the rig, go to the deformation bones, and in pose mode, I have to hide the jaw and select these tongue bones. Go out of local mode, and then select the tongue, shift select the rig, go to ARP, skin, and these settings are fine, but I also want to enable selected bones only. And that will only use the selected bones, the tongue bones that I just selected, for the weighting. And I can just press bind. So Auto Rig Pro is giving me this warning. I think just pressing OK should be fine. Let's check. Yeah, it's looking good. Sometimes when you bind the rig several times, you may get several armature modifiers. So Auto Rig Pro is trying to avoid that. Cool. Now if I go to the controls in pose mode, here are the tongue controls, and they can move my tongue. So that is perfect. You can move, scale, and rotate these controls. So the tongue is taken care of. Next, in object mode, Alt-H to unhide the beak. And now I'm going to delete all of the vertex groups. Again, that will remove all weighting from this beak, so now it will not move with the head. Next, select the beak, shift select the armature, Control P with empty groups to add the empty groups again. And then I'll go to edit mode for this beak, select all vertices, and here in the search field, look for jaw, select the jawbone X, click assign. And now if I go to the rig, you'll see that this widget here opens the controls the beak. In reality, it is controlled by this jawbone here, which is a deformation bone. The flesh around the beak doesn't move with the beak, and that is why it looks really strange. So what we need to do is, let's keep it open like this. Go to object mode, select the rig, shift select the main mesh, go to weight paint mode, control click on this jawbone, and I can even press shift H to hide everything else and disable X-ray. That way I'll see things better. And then use the draw brush, mix, and let's check the settings just in case. It's looking good. We have mirroring and auto normalize. And now I just have to start clicking around this lower lip, if you will, and it will start deforming with the jaw. Some blurring. Maybe I have to paint a little bit more here and also inside the mouth. So something like this will start to look good. There are limitations to what we can do with this model because the geometry, the topology of the mouth and the beak do not match. But I think this looks decent and it is the best I can do with the model that I have. Next we have the eyes. So if I go to pose mode here and press Alt H and hide the deforming bones for now, we have this large control which is supposed to move both eyes. It is kind of useless for the bird. It is meant for humans. In this bird, you probably just want to use this control here, which should move the eye. The problem now is that the eye geometry is not weighted to the eye bone. So let's go to object mode, select the eyes, and then on the vertex group, you can use, let's go to edit mode actually, and select everything and choose remove from all groups. Now, these eye bones shouldn't be weighted to anything anymore. And then look for eye, which we won't find because we don't have the vertex groups. Let's go to object mode, shift select the rig, Control P with empty groups just to add the groups. Then back to the eye, edit mode, and here we'll find the eye. So if I look for CI dot, that will give me the left eye and the right eye bones. I'll press L over this eye to select the whole geometry and then press CIL and assign. And on the other side, select the whole right eye, select CIR and assign. Now in the rig, if I move this control, you'll see that the eyeball is moving and kind of displacing the eyelids, which is very nice. Okay, we have the eye working. Now, let me quickly show you why I added these controls, even though we are not using them and you're free not to use them. I'm going to select these two beaks, shift select the rig, Control P with empty groups, just in case. I'm not sure if the groups are there. And then I can go to the lower beak. So select the rig, shift select the beak, go to weight paint mode, and then control click on this control, for example. Let's make sure that mirror vertex groups is enabled with X and auto normalize. And now if I start clicking in this area, this bone will start affecting this part of the beak. And that will allow me to do some cartoony effects to this beak if I wanted to. So with this control, I can always open the whole beak, but if I grab this control here, I can kind of displace the edge of the beak. So if that is something that you want, you can keep painting here for each of these controls, and that will allow you to control the edge of the beak. I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to show you this. If you like it, paint your weights and you'll have cartoony controls, but also full beak control. The next part of this video is going to be fun, I think. The control shapes that Auto Rig Pro generates automatically are not always perfect for the character that you're working on, because they're kind of generalized, and also they're mainly meant for the human. So when you're rigging something else, things may look a little bit off. Perfect example, this huge eye control here, which we may never use actually. So let's start here. Auto Rig Pro has great tools for controlling these shapes. You just have to go to ARP Rig and click the Edit Shape button. And now I can just scale this control and move it a little bit out of the way. I'll make it very small because I don't expect to use it, and just press Apply Shape. I'm just going to keep aligning bones the way I like them. I kind of like minimalistic rigs where things are easy to see even with the control shapes visible. So for example, this head control I may want to bring closer to the head and make it smaller. Still works the same, it's just smaller and everything is more visible. When you're done editing a shape, always press Apply Shape. I want to set the eyelid controls much closer to the eye. Maybe make them smaller. Apply Shape, and for symmetrical shapes you can press this button and that will mirror the shape on the other side. Now the body shapes, I'm just going to make sure that they are visible, because if we enable X-ray here, you'll see that some of them are just below the body and they will be hard to select. And with X-ray, everything is visible, which gets very busy and annoying. So let's edit this shape. And I like to make it just big enough. For the feathers, I want to do something that will be time consuming, so it's entirely up to you if you want to do it. I want to have controls that look something like this. So I'll select the lower one and just select one vertex, Control I, X, and delete all other vertices. Then snap this vertex on the feather, extrude some vertices. And so basically create the shape of the feather. I just have to snap the vertices. And apply shape. And mirror it on the other side. So I'm not going to record this. I'm just going to stop the recording and start again when I'm done. This is just my idea. You don't have to do it. Alright, after 30 minutes or so, I have what I think are very nice shapes. Whereas before we had all of these circles overlapping each other, it was hard to say which feather I was selecting, but now there is no doubt. And these shapes are very personal, so if you want to do something else, feel free. Whatever makes the rig easier to use for you, go ahead and do it. So here things are actually quite bad. I have no idea which control does what, so I'm going to do the exact same thing here and probably not record it either. Okay, so here is what I did with the tail. For the tip of the feathers I have this control, which is fairly intuitive. And because everything is overlapping, I organized these controls for the top of the feather in this way. So this top square controls the top feather, and the next one controls the next feather, and this one the lowest feather. And that makes sense to me. Now let's take care of this mess here. These controls appear very messy because they appear here at the base of the feather. If they were here at the end, they would be much easier to understand. And there is a way to do this. So this is the control for the top feather. So select this tip control, press F2 and press Ctrl C to copy the name. Then go back to this control, go to the bone tab, viewport display, and in override transform, paste this name. Now this control will be rendered based on the position of this bone. And this is a very cool feature of Blender. So then I can edit shape again, press the 3D cursor over here, Shift S, selection to cursor, and enable offset, and just scale down this control. You can shape it in some way if you like, but this will work quite well. So something like this, and now this shape just rotates the whole feather, and it's much easier to understand than having all of these shapes overlapping each other. So let's do the exact same thing for all of these controls. Okay, I'm done, and this is so much better. This tail actually kind of makes sense now. Now let's move on to the feet. So I don't really like this shape. I prefer the flat footstep at the ground. So edit shape, and I can just delete these vertices and set the shape and size of this box. If you want to bevel, you can press Ctrl-Shift-B. If you like, you can even shape it more like the actual foot of the bird. Something like this, apply and mirror. And now I have this control, which is obviously the foot control. For the fingers, I actually had a fun idea. I'm not sure if everybody will like it, but I like it. So I'll go to Edit Shape, Shift S, and place the cursor to the selected. I'll just delete all of these vertices that I have, and then press Shift A and create a new sphere. Make it 8 by 4, and scale it down, and make it kind of appear just above the knuckle. I'm going to make it very small because I like minimalistic interface. So apply shape, and then I could select all of these other finger controls, and then shift select this one, go to the custom object and right click and choose copy to selected, and that will give me the exact same sphere on all of these shapes. Also this one, let's copy to selected. And this one is kind of hidden below the surface, so I can edit shape and bring it up on top of the surface. Apply shape, and something else that I could do is select all of these shapes and disable wireframe, and again right click and copy to selected. Yeah, and that will make all of these shapes solid. I can also give it smooth shading and make it smaller. Now I'm just going to edit the remaining shapes and place them exactly where I want. Then I can mirror all of these shapes. I can add to favorites. Let's disable the wireframe for these shapes. And now I have these extremely minimalistic shapes on the foot, and I like it. We also have this control which rotates all fingers. If I just place it around here, I think it's quite visible and it makes sense. This shape we won't really use for the bird, it's more useful for humans, so it's fine. These roots are kind of small, so let's just make them bigger. And I think you get the idea. I won't do much more, but the goal is to make the shapes easy to select, easy to understand, and they should also allow you to see your model. Also keep in mind that arms and legs have FK and IK mode, and when you switch between the modes, there are different shapes. So you may want to switch each leg to, now we are in IK mode, let's switch to FK, and you'll see that there are other shapes. So here we have the FK foot. Let's say that I like to be able to distinguish between the FK and IK foot. So I could just shape it like this. And that's my FK foot. Same with the arm, check your IK and FK and edit as needed. So let's do some organization in the rig layers now. We use them a little bit to help us with the rigging process, but now I want to really set up some layers which will be helpful in the animation process. By the way, this whole area with the settings and rig layers is in the tool menu, but if you go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and look for Auto Rig Pro, extend the options, you'll see that this Tools tab is under Tool. If you just rename this to ARP, everything will move in the ARP tab, or you can create your own toolbar, right? Personally, I like everything in one place. So normally I would keep it like this. For tutorials, I like to keep things to default just so that people don't get confused. So back to tool and let's move on. I already have these layers for the long feathers and short feathers. The problem is that they only cover the left side. So I can use the select menu, which you can enable from here, select toggle, and use it to select everything, all of the short feathers. Then go to select, select mirror, and choose extend. That will give me all of the short feathers. And then I'll expand these options and click edit layer. I just need to press add selected bones. And now all of these short feathers will be on this layer. So let's do the same for the long feathers. Select, select mirror, extend, and then I'll select the long feathers layer, edit layers, add selected bones. And now I can hide all of these long feathers and short feathers. So when I'm not working on the feathers, that will simplify my rig a lot. There are also some controls which I don't expect to use. For example, these additional feather controls that we never used. Some of them I actually placed on this third layer, so let's unhide them. So I'm not sure where these bones on the left side went, but that's okay. I'll just select these bones that I don't want. This eye control I don't want. This control here allows for cartoony deformation of the eye. I'm probably not going to use it. And this one I'm not sure what it is for. This control here on the foot I also don't expect to use, and also on the other side. So let's create a new layer. Add our bones. Okay. And name it hidden or something like that. And now I can hide these controls. So anything that I don't expect to use, I'm going to add to this layer. All of the face controls I can also put on a special layer. So let's just select them. These skull bones are different. I'm going to deselect them, create a new layer, add selected bones, call it face. And I can organize it. The skull bones I also don't expect to use, so I'm going to go to the hidden layer, edit layer, and add selected bones. And now that will hide the skull layers as well. Here I can see that the neck control is too small. So go to ARP, edit shape, scale it up so that I can see it, and apply shape. You could also create a layer of secondary control, so anything that you don't expect to use all the time, you can place on a separate layer and just hide and unhide it as needed. The feathers are basically something like that. I'll place these tail feathers on a separate layer. I want to make this control for the wing fold a little bit less obtrusive, so let's go to ARP and edit the reference bones. And this control is represented by this bone, so just scale it down and place it near the shoulder and match the rig. And I like this better. So spend as much time as necessary to make your rig nice and usable. For a character that you won't use that much, that may be a waste of time, but for a main character, spending a couple of hours on this is not a waste of time. Okay, now just for fun, I'm going to show you how you can edit the AutoRig Pro rig to customize it and to change it, and how adaptable AutoRig Pro is. I have to say that I cannot promise that the changes will be completely safe. They may break something in the rig. They didn't, as far as I can tell, but it is a possibility, so you have to know what you're doing. This is just a quick demonstration. Okay, so here we have these fingers which we can control. We can switch to local orientation and individual origins, and I can even select a bunch of these, get the rotate gizmo and rotate on the x-axis, and I'll be bending all of these fingers at the same time, which is nice, but it would be nice to have controls which do this automatically. So here's what you could do. Select the first finger control and go to edit shape. I'm sorry, not edit shape, but go to edit mode. And let's isolate the rig. And here we have these three bones selected. I have x-axis mirror. Press Shift D, duplicate them, and I have individual origins. So I'm going to press S and scale all of these bones a little bit. So now I have these additional bones that I can work with. They are already parented to the main rig, so they will move with the leg. Now I want to change the shape of this to a simple rectangle. So I'll just place the cursor here, delete everything, create a new plane, delete faces, and make it a little bit smaller. And place it at the finger. Something like that, and that will be my bend control. Apply the shape, and let's copy this shape to all of the other bones. Shift select this one, go to the bone tab, custom object, right click, copy to selected. And now I can edit these slightly. I cannot mirror this shape for some reason, probably because I'm doing something quite customized, but that's okay. Okay, so now the way we are going to do this is select this new control, shift select one of the finger controls, press Ctrl Shift C for constraints, and choose the transformation constraint. Transformation is very powerful. Let's go to the constraint tab and expand the options. So we have from and to, and so we want to map from the scale of the control to the rotation of the finger control. And when my bend control reaches a scale of 0.5, I want the finger to rotate minus 90 on the x-axis. The way I know this is by going to item, and then if I give this x-axis a negative value, I can see that it rotates exactly as I want it. And I'll change local space and local space here. Now if I scale this widget, you'll see that it bends the finger. If I go back to the constraint and enable extrapolate, that will enable us to bend the finger even beyond these values that we established. So if I scale it up, it will bend the other way. Now I can select these two controls and then shift select this one, which has the constraint, go to pose, constraints, copy constraints. And now if I scale this control, it will bend all of the fingers because all of them got this same constraint, and so they're bending as this control scales. To copy this to the remaining bones, just select all of these bones that do not have the constraint and shift select one of the bones that do have the constraint, go to pose, constraints, copy constraints. And now this will bend all of the fingers, which can be nice, it can be exactly what you want, but what we want is for each control to scale one finger. So I can get this control, Control C to copy the name, then go to this constraint, paste the name in here, then select the other two bones on the same finger, shift select this one, pose, constraint, copy constraints, and that will copy the same constraint on the other bones. And now this control bends this finger. Okay, let's do the same here. Copy the name, paste it in here, and copy the constraints. Same here. And that is nice. Now, with individual origins, I can scale all of these, and that will create this grabbing motion. We can take this even further. Select this widget, go to edit mode, Shift D and duplicate it, and place it somewhere else. Now, in pose mode, I can tweak the shape. I'll keep it simple, something like this. Apply the shape. Select this new control. Shift select one of the finger controls. Control Shift C, copy scale. Now when I scale this gizmo here, this control also scales and therefore it bends the finger. Now if I select all of the other finger controls and finally shift select this one with the copy scale constraint, then go to pose, constraints, copy constraints, then all of the controls will inherit this copy scale, and now I can bend all fingers at once. Now I lost the ability to scale this finger, but if I just enable the offset feature on the constraint, that will allow me to scale these fingers individually, and this master control will also work. So we have the IK foot, grab control, finger control, and individual controls. So full freedom. Now an easy way to copy this on the other side, it can be a little bit risky, but if I just go to edit mode and select all of these bones, and just right click and symmetrize them. Yeah, it did work, and I have everything on the other side. And it's working. I just had a small additional idea. If I select this control that bends the finger now and shift select the first finger control, press Control Shift C and choose copy rotation, that will let me rotate this finger with this control and also bend it like this. However, I have to make sure that the copy rotation constraint is above the transformation one. The order matters because of calculations. So now this will work perfectly. I can rotate this control and scale to bend. And so I can even hide these controls or put them on a hidden layer to simplify my rig quite a lot. And if you like this idea, you can do it for the remaining fingers. This should also work. I think at some point in the video I said that some birds blink like humans and other mammals, but many birds have a special membrane that covers their eye from time to time. It looks like this. Supposedly it's called a nictitating membrane, and now I'm going to show a very basic setup for this kind of membrane, because why not? So if I select the eyes and isolate them, I can duplicate them, Shift-D, duplicate the whole object. Let's name this eyes membranes, and then go to the original eyes, edit mode, individual origins, select everything and press S to scale the original eyes a little bit smaller so that the membranes are overlapping the eyes. Then select the membranes and give them a new material. I want something fleshy, transparent and translucent. Alpha should be set to hashed or blend. You can turn on refractions for Eevee, and you also have to go here and enable reflections and refractions. So something like that. I want to delete half of these membrane spheres. Now if I place the 3D cursor exactly here in the center of the eye and use it as a rotation pivot point, and if I rotate this, you'll see how it can cover the eye. So that will be our membrane. I can also give it solidify and place it above the subsurf. Okay, now for the rigging part, I need a new bone that is exactly at the center of the eyeball. So for example, this eye track bone can do, or the CI bone. If we disable the shapes, it is actually exactly in the center of the eye. So let's go to edit mode and Shift-D, duplicate this bone in individual origin, scale it up a little bit, and let's press Shift-H to hide these two bones, and F2 to rename membrane.L, and let's rename this one as well, membrane.R. Now in pose mode, this bone that I duplicated had some kind of constraint, so let's get rid of it, and on the other side as well. And select these two bones, shift select the head bone, go to edit mode, and I have to select them in edit mode. Shift select the head, Control P, keep offset. My membrane bone is over here now. It has a shape, so let's get rid of the shape. All right, let's go to the membrane object, shift select the rig, Control P with empty groups to add the additional deforming bones. This membrane bone is a deformed bone. So now for the membranes, go to edit mode, select everything, remove from all groups, and then look for the membrane group. And then I have to select the left part and assign it to the membrane L, and the right part and assign it to the membrane right. If I rotate this bone, it will show the membrane and it will allow me to overlay it over the eyes. There is some intersection. Let's go to the eye, edit mode, and again in individual origins, scale them down just a little bit more. Now the membrane looks good. And that works. If you want to take it one step further, we can create an action constraint for this, and this will give you a perspective about how this wing fold is created. So let's just go to edit mode and create a new bone. I'll place the cursor over here at the edge of the eye, Shift A, and create a new bone, individual origins, and scale this bone down a little bit and offset it a little bit. F2 and name it membrane control.L and symmetrize it. Okay, now in pose mode, I can go to Dope Sheet Action Editor, unlink any existing actions and create a new action and call it membrane action. At frame 0, I'm going to keyframe both bones for rotation and then go to frame 10, or it doesn't have to be frame 10, it can be 20. You can set the end with control and end. And now at the end, rotate the bone until it covers the eye. And I have to enable X-axis mirror and rotate a little bit so that the other bone is also moved. Then select both and add a rotation keyframe. And now we have this action. Select these keyframes, press T and choose linear. This will create linear interpolation. We don't want any ease in and ease out for this animation. Now you can unlink this. Go to your membrane control. Shift select the membrane bone. Control Shift C action. And now if I go to the constraint tab, I have the action constraint almost set up. So I want that when this bone moves on its local Z axis like this, that the action will be activated. So let's go to the constraint. The target is the membrane control and we want Z location local space. And let's see how much of a movement we want. If I move this eye to around the other corner, it will be minus 2.1. So select this bone and set max to minus 0.2.1. For the action, choose the membrane action and set end to 20. Now just moving this bone will open and close the membrane. I can go to the bone tab and give it a custom object. And Auto Rig Pro provides these arrow shapes which are perfect. I just have to edit the shape to point in the right direction, scale it down a little bit and apply shape. And now I have this very intuitive control. If you want to make it even more intuitive, you can go to edit mode and press Ctrl R to roll this bone a little bit in this direction. Then in pose mode, go to constraints and give it a limit location. Location. Set it to local space. Enable everything and set minimum Z to this number that we saw earlier, 0.21. Oh, that should be minus 0.21. Now I can only move this bone in this X-axis, and it also stops at the corners of the eyes. Now I can just go to edit mode, symmetrize this bone, and it should be all set up. Actually, no, I have to symmetrize this bone as well. This is the eye membrane deformation bone. So that will copy the constraints as well. And you can see that now I can close this membrane and this one individually. You have to make sure that everything works. So for example, currently these bones are not yet parented to the head bone. So just select them, shift select the head, go to edit mode, Control P, keep offset. And now my membrane controls will be moving with the head, so I can rotate the head. This bone goes a little bit into the eye, so let's go to edit mode and just move it a little bit to the side. And now it will not overlap the eye. And everything should work together, so I can still close the eye, I can rotate the eye, and the membrane works independently. Okay, looking good, and this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned a lot about Auto Rig Pro in general, about the wing rigs. If you did, please support us with the usual likes, subscribes, and comments on YouTube, and also consider getting the bonus content, which is very affordable and it will give you access to some unreleased stuff.